All right, so if you're picking up Phil Knight's memoir, Shoe Dog, expecting another story about some brilliant founder with a perfect plan, you are in for a serious shock. We're going to distill the raw, brutally honest philosophy of a book that's way less about business success and a whole lot more about pure, desperate survival. Let's dive in.
And right from the jump, Knight just shatters the whole myth. See, this isn't a story designed to make you feel confident. It's a story that actually validates your fear. It gives you permission to move forward while doubting yourself every single day. The guy telling the story isn't some visionary genius. He's an anxious, kind of shy, debt-ridden guy who just refused to stop. And this is what's so fascinating. Look at this contrast. On one side, you've got the fantasy that most business books sell you. Have a grand plan, build your perfect castle. But on the other side, you've got the Shoe Dog reality. You start out lost in a dark forest of fear and confusion, and your only plan is to just keep moving. It's a totally different operating system for building anything that actually matters. And that's exactly why people call this book dangerous. It doesn't give you some clean 7-step strategy. Nope. It just plunges you right into the raw feeling of building something from nothing. The exhaustion, the absolute chaos, and that constant nagging threat of failure. Which brings us to the single most important lesson in the entire book. If you remember one thing, make it this. You don't find clarity by thinking, you find it by doing. Movement creates clarity. Knight didn't have a map. He just started walking, and the path slowly revealed itself, one painful step at a time. Now, to really get this, we have to go back to the very beginning. Because the origin of what would one day become Nike, well, it wasn't some grand vision. It was what he called his crazy idea, and it was born from a young man who felt completely and utterly lost. Phil Knight was not a confident entrepreneur. Not even close. He was basically a recent grad with this little idea he jotted down in a school paper that Japanese running shoes could totally disrupt the market. But that's all it was. An unfinished thought, there was no proof, no money, and seriously, no confidence behind it.
And this timeline just shows you how messy it all was. Does he start a company? No. He goes on a trip around the world. Then he's in a meeting in Japan with no company and zero experience, and he just spontaneously invents blue ribbon sports to convince a manufacturer to work with him. It was just one impulsive, uncertain step after another that somehow ended with him selling shoes from the trunk of his car. And this, right here, this defines the core principle of those early days. It wasn't about strategy. It was about having the courage, a courage fueled by pure desperation, to just act without any safety net. He literally lied about having a company and then had to race home and build the truth to catch up to his own story. Think about that. But all this chaotic energy, it created its own set of problems. As the company actually started to grow, a new brutal reality set in. Success didn't bring relief. It brought a whole new kind of nightmare. The feeling of being trapped by your own growth. Here's the trap. Every single dollar the company made went right back into buying more shoes to sell. So they were constantly in debt, always on the verge of total collapse. Knight was living in a state of permanent anxiety. For him, success just felt like a higher stakes version of survival. And on the outside, everything looked perfect. The numbers were exploding, sales were doubling year after year. To the public and to their competitors, this looked like a classic overnight success story. But internally, in the bank account, there was nothing. Zilch. Every single cent was being reinvested immediately. They weren't building a savings account. They were just feeding this ever-hungrier machine. And this was the hidden reality that almost killed them. Constant, crushing debt. Banks were always on the phone, threatening to pull their loans. Now, this is the point in the story where most people would have just quit. But Knight, he somehow accepted that debt was the fuel for his obsession. So how in the world did they survive? I mean, the company was nearly destroyed by lawsuits, manufacturing failures, just internal chaos. The answer wasn't some brilliant strategy from Phil Knight, it was the people. Nike was built by a band of absolute misfits. These were not polished corporate executives you see on magazine covers. They were obsessive, rebellious, dreamers who cared way more about running and winning than they did about money or stability. They were more like a cult than a company. And this really gets to Knight's very unusual leadership style. As an introvert who hated confrontation, he wasn't giving these big, rousing speeches or micromanaging every detail. Instead, his whole strategy was to just give his brilliant, obsessive people the space to do their thing.
He protected their genius from any interference.
So eventually, after years of this brutal struggle, Nike breaks through. They sponsor the right athletes, they take these huge risks, and they become a cultural phenomenon. But when the company finally goes public, making Knight an incredibly wealthy man, he doesn't celebrate. He just feels numb.
And this right here might be one of the deepest truths in the entire book. Hitting that external milestone, the IPO, it did absolutely nothing to cure the anxiety that had driven him for years. He realized that the struggle, the purpose, the doing, that was the real reward. The achievement itself, it was kind of empty. So, what does all of this mean for you right now? Well, we can actually distill Knight's entire journey into a practical, brutally honest challenge. And this isn't about fluffy motivation. This is for the builders, the creators, and the survivors out there. Okay, let's break down these rules. First, pick one obsession. Stop multitasking your life away. Commit fully, no backup plans. Second, move before you're ready. Don't wait for permission or the perfect moment. Take some uncomfortable action every single day. Third, accept ugly progress. Your first drafts or first products, they're going to be ugly. That's fine. Ugly work is infinitely better than a perfect idea that never gets made. Fourth, live slightly unstable. Too much comfort kills urgency, so reduce your safety nets just enough so that failure actually hurts a little. Fifth, build your tribe. You cannot do this alone. Find other obsessed people and struggle together. And finally, Rule 6, redefine success as not quitting. Success isn't a destination. It's just the simple act of refusing to stop. This is the question that gets to the absolute heart of it all. This isn't about what you'd like to do. It's about what you have to do. What is the one thing that would feel like a profound, deep loss if you gave up on it? That right there, that is your obsession. And this is the final, crucial point to really let sink in. Victory isn't about maintaining some unwavering belief in yourself. Phil Knight lost belief in himself constantly. He won because he built a system of movement and a team around him that literally carried him forward, even when his own faith was completely gone. So the ultimate takeaway from Shoe Dog is this: certainty is a myth. The perfect plan? It doesn't exist. Stop waiting for them. The real path forward is to just start moving, to embrace the fear and the uncertainty as part of the process. Because when you do that, you stop being someone who just has goals. You become dangerous.